At 30,000 feet, what started as a routine government flight turned into a dramatic standoff that's now igniting conversations across the country. When White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, calm but resolute, called for a mid-flight course change tied to urgent national concerns, the pilot, a vocal liberal and self-proclaimed government skeptic, defiantly refused. The tension was palpable, the stakes unmistakable. What happened next wasn't just a clash in the skies. It became a lightning rod for the bigger questions America's asking. Who really holds the power, and who gets to decide? Before we take you inside this stunning in-air confrontation, let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you stay ahead of the stories that truly matter. The soft hum of the engines wrapped the cabin in a strange kind of calm. Outside the government aircraft, the clouds stretched endlessly in every direction, white and harmless, like the sky was pretending everything was peaceful. But inside that plane, peace was cracking. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest and perhaps most defiant White House press secretary in modern history, sat quietly by the window. She wasn't checking emails or reviewing speeches. She was holding her encrypted phone so tightly her knuckles were white. A message had come through. Top priority clearance, eyes only, and it had shattered the calm. The content was short and terrifying. Documents linked to national media sabotage confirmed. Source, Anna Harper. Location, 32 miles north of Des Moines, Iowa. Target under surveillance. Extraction window, 3 hours or less. The sender was someone she trusted from the inside, and the warning was crystal clear. If Karoline didn't get to Iowa now, the evidence, proof of a media-driven smear campaign and illegal surveillance targeting American citizens, would disappear forever. She looked across the aisle. Most of her team was asleep or flipping through folders. Her senior aide, Sophia, caught her glance and raised an eyebrow. Karoline stood. Everything changed the moment she started walking down the narrow aisle. She moved with purpose, heels clicking softly on the floor, but each step felt heavier than the last. She reached the cockpit door and gave 2 sharp knocks. Inside, Captain Mark Hastings turned. A decorated pilot, calm as stone, former Air Force, he was known for his nerves of steel. But Karoline wasn't there to admire his resume. "We need to divert," she said calmly. Hastings blinked. "Excuse me?" She leaned in slightly, voice low but firm. "Iowa, 32 miles north of Des Moines. It's urgent. I need this aircraft on a new course, immediately." There was a long pause. Then the unexpected happened. The pilot exhaled slowly. "I'm afraid I can't do that, ma'am." Her jaw stiffened. "I'm not making a suggestion, Captain. I'm issuing an order, under executive-level protocol. This isn't a routine detour. This is national security." "I've received different orders," Hastings replied coolly. Karoline's stomach sank. "From whom?" "I can't say." And just like that, the air in the cockpit dropped 10 degrees. She didn't yell. She didn't panic. But the silence that followed was deafening. Back in the main cabin, Sophia stood quickly as Karoline returned, her face pale. "What is it?" she whispered. Karoline didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to her head of security. "Get me a copy of the current flight plan and start recording cockpit communications. Something's wrong." Sophia's voice trembled slightly. "Are we in danger?" Karoline nodded once. "We might be flying straight into a cover-up." 10 minutes later, Karoline had the report in her hands, and what she saw made her skin crawl. Buried in a classified log, subtly inserted between normal entries, was a restricted security memo. Captain Mark Hastings, flagged, not confirmed guilty, but flagged. An anonymous tip linked him to a private contractor involved in digital intelligence for a corporate media group. one rumored to have worked against her administration from the shadows. Karoline felt her pulse quicken. He was compromised. She looked toward the front of the plane. Hastings still sat behind the controls, stoic, unreadable. She rose again, this time not alone. Two agents walked with her to the cockpit. Karoline knocked once. The door didn't open. Then a voice crackled through the intercom, cold and direct. This cockpit is now under emergency lockdown. I'm in full control. No one's landing this plane in Iowa. Gas echoed from the cabin. The air thickened with confusion, fear. Sophia gripped the armrest, her knuckles white. Karoline didn't flinch. She turned to her team. This isn't a disagreement. This is a hijacking from the inside. She moved with speed, taking a satellite phone from the emergency case and stepping into the private communications chamber. Secure line to National Command, she said. Within moments, as she was speaking to General Leland Carr, an old war dog who trusted her judgment more than any press secretary he'd ever known. I need override clearance to force a mid-air protocol shift. We have a compromised pilot. This flight is at risk. There was a pause. Do you have confirmation? The general asked. Give me 30 minutes. I'll bring it to you myself. He didn't ask more, because when Karoline said she'd prove it, she meant it. In the rear cabin, a technician named Ethan, barely 20, bright and still green, was already sifting through internal logs. Ma'am, he whispered, pulling Karoline aside, there's a technical passage under the floor, between cabin and cockpit. Karoline looked him in the eye. Can you fit through it? He hesitated. Yes, but it's dangerous. Then show me. As they moved toward the service hatch, Sophia grabbed Karoline's hand. You don't have to do this, she whispered, eyes wet. Karoline looked back at her, saw the young woman who'd stood beside her for years, endured the slander, the death threats, the online abuse. I know, she replied softly, but I'm going to. Beneath the cabin, the crawl space was cramped and hot. Wires snaked along the metal walls like veins. Karoline scraped her knee on a bolt. The air smelled like fuel and age. But none of that mattered. She was inches from the cockpit, from the truth, and from stopping a betrayal in real time. She placed her hand on the hatch beneath the pilot's chair and mouthed a silent prayer. Let them know we're not afraid. As she pushed the hatch upward, the metal creaked loud enough to startle Hastings. He turned too late. Karoline burst into the cockpit, followed by Agent Larson. Step away from the controls, she ordered. Hastings froze. The look on his face was less fear and more disbelief. You're not supposed to be here, he said. Karoline's voice was ice. Neither are you. Larson secured the pilot, handcuffing him in seconds. Karoline sat down in the co-pilot's chair, panting from the climb. Reset our route, she said. We're going to Iowa. The moment spread through the plane like sunlight. Sophia gasped with relief. Ethan wiped tears from his cheek. The crew began to applaud, quiet at first, then growing louder. Not for a political leader, but for a woman who crawled through steel to defend the truth. The plane had changed, not just direction, but energy. What once felt like quiet routine now pulsed with fire. Karoline sat in the co-pilot's chair, breathing slowly, her scraped hands resting on her lap. Her blazer was torn, her voice hoarse, but her eyes were sharper than ever. Behind her, the once doubtful crew now moved with conviction. No one questioned her authority, not after she crawled through steel, confronted a rogue pilot, and seized back command at 30,000 feet. But the mission wasn't over. They still had to land, and she still had to protect the person who started it all, the whistleblower, Anna Harper. In the rear of the cabin, Ethan, the youngest staffer on board, sat beside Sophia, the aide who had prayed through tears just an hour earlier. The plane had been hijacked in silence, but reclaimed through grit. Sophia leaned in close. What do you think happens now? Ethan shook his head. I think we're about to see what real courage looks like. Caroline's comms headset crackled. Ma'am, we're 22 minutes from Iowa airspace. She nodded. Any air traffic issues? The co-pilot hesitated. We were cleared, but we've just been ordered to divert. Again. Caroline narrowed her eyes. By who? No name, just a federal override directive. Sophia turned toward Caroline from the main cabin. That's not normal. Those overrides need executive signatures. Caroline didn't wait. Patch me through to the governor of Iowa. Direct line, now. Less than a minute later, her voice came over the secure link. Governor Clara Evans, a seasoned constitutionalist with zero tolerance for shadow games. Caroline didn't sugarcoat a word. Governor, I am en route to a secure location in your state with evidence tied to illegal media surveillance. Forces are trying to prevent this landing. We need local clearance. We need to land in Cedar Valley, now. There was a long pause on the other end. Then came the answer that sealed history. Miss Leavitt, Cedar Valley is ready. We stand with you. Caroline looked toward the cabin. Everyone stared at her, silent, breath held, and she simply nodded. Set course to Cedar Valley, she said. The cabin exhaled, and some even smiled. But back on the East Coast in a glossy glass-walled boardroom in D.C., the silence was anything but peaceful. A woman named Olivia Cross stood at the head of a table, her lips pressed tightly. She wasn't a government official, but she knew how to own one. They weren't supposed to get past the pilot, she snapped. Her assistant cleared his throat. She crawled under the floor, ma'am. Cross turned sharply. Who is this woman? Someone who doesn't break, he said quietly. The golden sunlight bathed the fields of Iowa in a soft hush. In a small library tucked between two churches and a hardware store, Anna Harper sat alone at a corner table, a worn denim jacket wrapped around her shoulders. Her fingers clutched a flash drive, taped inside a hollowed-out copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. Anna was 64th, former investigative journalist, once the darling of a national outlet, until she refused to publish a story that smeared an innocent military widow and was quietly retired. What she held in that flash drive, emails, transcripts, and internal documents, was the product of 4 years of watching, waiting, risking everything. She'd only trusted one name to take it to the people, Karoline Leavitt. Outside, a black SUV cruised past the library slowly. Men in dark suits scanned the sidewalk. Anna's hands shook. She whispered to herself, "Please let her get here." Back on the plane, Caroline was briefed. The whistleblower is in position, but so are they. 3 black vehicles. We've confirmed 2 are private intelligence contractors. Caroline didn't hesitate. Secure a ground convoy and bring me tactical. Sophia stepped forward. Ma'am, I'll go in your place. Caroline looked her dead in the eye. You think I'd let anyone else carry this message? Sophia's voice broke. They'll be watching for you. Caroline placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let them see me coming. The plane touched down at Cedar Valley Airport at 5:43 p.m. No cameras, no press, just a line of Iowa State Patrol cars and silence. Caroline stepped out onto the tarmac, escorted by agents and flanked by Ethan and Sophia. She wore no makeup, no prepared remarks, only truth. In the convoy's lead vehicle, she stared out the window toward the horizon. They weren't just driving to a library, they were driving to a reckoning. At 6:03 p.m., the convoy pulled up to the old brick building. Inside, Anna Harper sat at the window, her heart pounding. The black SUVs were still there. So was her fear. But she held her ground. She always had. Then, footsteps. A door creaked open, and in walked Karoline Leavitt. Not with flash, not with force, just quiet authority. Anna stood. Their eyes met, and they both cried. Karoline crossed the room and gently took Anna's hands. "You did it," she whispered. Anna laughed through her tears. "I was just waiting for someone brave enough to listen." Karoline reached into her coat and pulled out a velvet pouch. Inside, Sophia's signed pen and a note from Ethan that simply said, "Thank you for telling the truth." Anna placed the flash drive in Karoline's hand, and the room fell still. Outside, agents moved swiftly, detaining the private contractors without resistance. One man muttered under his breath, "She wasn't supposed to get this far." An officer replied, "Maybe you should have picked someone easier to stop." Back inside the library, Anna asked one final question. "Will they ever listen?" Karoline placed the flash drive in a case, her voice calm, steady. "They will now." As the convoy rolled out into the fading light of Iowa's evening sky, Sophia leaned her head on the window, tears streaming. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. Ethan sat beside her, clutching a notebook filled with scribbles from the flight. "She didn't have to fight," he said softly, "but she did." In the lead car, Karoline stared at the USB drive. She knew what came next. She knew she might be silenced, mocked, threatened, but she also knew the cost of saying nothing. She looked to the sky and whispered, "Let them try." Back aboard the government plane, Karoline sat in silence. The flash drive burned in her hand, not with heat, but with weight. It wasn't just a collection of files. It was the living heartbeat of a truth America had forgotten to believe in. She turned to the onboard tech officer. "Prep the transmission room. I'm going live in 30 minutes. He blinked. "You want to go live from the plane?" "Yes," she replied, unblinking. "Unfiltered, uncut. Right now." The cabin stirred with urgency. Sophia wiped her eyes. Ethan stood frozen, unsure whether to cheer or cry. In the back, a Marine flight crew member muttered, "This is bigger than we thought." And he was right, because what Karoline was about to say wasn't just about corruption, it was about restoration. As her team prepared the satellite feed, a message crackled through the radio. "This is Langley Air Base Control. We have an incoming order to prevent all unauthorized broadcasts from the aircraft." The tech officer turned to Karoline, pale. "They're trying to shut us down before you speak." Karoline didn't hesitate. "Bypass the protocol. Use the old presidential override code. If they want to stop me, they'll have to unplug the whole country." With seconds to go, the lights in the cabin dimmed. Karoline sat before the camera. No suit, no makeup, just truth. The red light blinked, and across America, television screens lit up, not with anchors, not with politicians, but with her. Her voice, calm but crackling with emotion, echoed into homes from Boston to Bakersfield. "My name is Karoline Leavitt. I am the press secretary of the United States. And what I hold in my hand is the story they told you didn't exist." She raised the flash drive. "These documents, emails, memos, financial trails, prove a coordinated media campaign to silence citizens, smear truth-tellers, and manipulate what you see. They tried to stop me from getting here. A pilot refused a lawful order. Private agents tried to intercept me. But the truth, like all truth, has a voice stronger than control." She paused. "I'm not speaking as a politician. I'm speaking as a daughter, a wife, a citizen, someone who still believes we are a nation worth fighting for. Tonight, this evidence will be released to every major network, to every journalist who's still brave enough to stand, and to you." She looked directly into the camera. "Because you, not them, are the guardians of America's soul." The feed ended. For a moment, the nation was silent. And then everything erupted. In homes across the country, families gathered in living rooms, stunned. A retired Vietnam vet in Florida saluted the screen. A nurse in Kansas wept openly, whispering, "Thank God." A coal miner in Pennsylvania, who hadn't trusted a single press conference in 15 years, whispered, "She finally said it." In a church in Alabama, people stood to pray, and in a small kitchen in Iowa, Anna Harper held her hands over her heart and cried, because her truth had finally been heard. The next morning, headlines didn't scream scandal. They whispered something different, something people hadn't felt in years. Hope. Investigations launched within 48 hours. Arrests followed. The whistleblower was granted full protection. Captain Hastings charged with attempted obstruction of federal duty. And the networks, those caught in the crosshairs of the scheme, began issuing retractions. One by one, the tide had turned, not because Karoline demanded it, but because she delivered it, the truth. But something even more powerful happened that week. Families started turning off the news to talk to each other. Veterans called old friends they hadn't heard from in decades. Churches filled with people who hadn't knelt in years. America didn't just react. America remembered. Remembered what it meant to believe in something again. On the seventh day, Karoline visited the Jefferson Memorial, not as a figure of power, but as a woman who had given everything to stand. She walked with Sophia and Ethan in silence. A crowd had gathered, but no one spoke. They just watched. And when Karoline turned to leave, an elderly woman stepped forward, hair silver, hands trembling. She held out a folded American flag, her husband's. "I lost him in Korea," she said softly. "He died for truth. I thought maybe we'd lost it." She placed the flag in Karoline's hands. "But you found it again." Karoline didn't speak. She just hugged her, longer than any political rule book would allow. Because in that moment, there were no rules, only remembrance. That night, Karoline returned to the airwaves one last time. She sat beneath a single light, the same worn Bible from her grandmother on the table, and she said, "We live in an age where power speaks loudly, but faith whispers, where influence buys silence, but sacrifice buys change." Let this be our reminder. Truth doesn't need permission, and it doesn't need protection from men in suits. It needs people like you. She paused. America's not finished. She's just waking up again. The feed cut, and across the country, the silence that followed wasn't fear. It was strength. And now, have you ever fought for something when everyone told you it was hopeless? Share your story in the comments. You may inspire someone still fighting today. If you believe truth can still win and that America is worth protecting, subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, sometimes the bravest voice in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one that simply refuses to be silenced.